All right, this is it, folks. This is when it starts to get a little interesting. Not like it was interesting before. This is JP talking here. It's my podcast, my experience, my Mormon memory. This one is when it gets a little interesting. This is when stuff starts to hit the fan. Previous episodes, if this is the first episode that you're listening to, what are you doing? Go back to the first episode and get caught up. In the previous episode, I talked about my first day working in the church office building at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yeah, it's a long title, I know. My first experience, my first day working for the Mormon Church, and it was actually a really positive experience, a very good experience. And if you get caught up if you haven't. If you have, thank you for listening this far. You know how that much means to me that people actually want to hear my story. I find it really, really cool that people want to hear my story. You know, I never really had a chance to share this story to anyone. I contacted John DeLynn of Mormon Stories. He never wrote back. Where were you, John? Come on. I want to be on your podcast. I want to share this story to the world. But you know what? I'm just going to create my own podcast anyway. So that's what this is, my Mormon memory. This is the next part of my experience working for the Mormon Church, and this is when it gets a little crazy. Anyway, on the previous episode, I mentioned that it was like the best day ever. The first day was like the best day ever. It was awesome. Everyone's super nice. People are super nice. Everyone's nice. You know, almost too good to be true kind of thing. And I met a bunch of my coworkers, full-time and intern. I mentioned how it works in the previous episode. How the whole thing works is a bunch of interns assisting like one or two full-time employees. I guess that's their way of saving money. I don't know, probably. And I was one of the interns, and I was assisting the small numbers of full-time people, copy and pasting into LDS.org and the church's website. And it was the easiest job ever. And everyone was super nice. And that was the first day. So that was the previous episode. And so the days and weeks go by, and I'm just like, you know, I commute to work. It takes an hour to commute on the train from Utah Valley to Salt Lake. And I'm loving life. This is really awesome. I graduated from college, and my wife just gave birth to my second kid, and life was moving forward. Things were going for me. You know, my wife and I were planning on buying a house real soon, and we were going to kick ass in the Mormon American dream, all right? I was working for the church, and I was loving it. My daily experience at first working for the church was I would show up on the 27th floor of the church office building. I'd show up. I would get my own desk. I had my laptop, and I'd open it, and I'd pretty much just email a bunch of full-time employees in my team. Hey, can I help you guys with anything? Oh, sure. JP, here you go. Help me with this. I just need you to copy and paste the Spanish translation of this page in LDS.org. It was just copy and paste. It was really easy. And that's what I did. And it was just me and like 6 or 7 other interns doing the same thing, trying to assist the people. And this is when the first couple of months, this is how it was. It was just like, this is a fun job. You know, every day we had a meeting, and everyone was super chill and laid back, and just everyone was happy, and everyone seemed really happy there. And I was accepted into this strange place. And even though I was Mormon most of my life, I still felt like things were off and things were strange. And however, you know, I was struggling at the time. My second son was born. I had a baby at home who was giving me lack of sleep. He had the hardest time sleeping at night. And I also had my oldest son who had autism, who would wake up screaming in the middle of the night. My oldest son, who was about 3 at the time, and he would wake up screaming in the middle of the night. He had autism, and he had panic attacks in the middle of the night, and wake up screaming and just jumping around, jumping off the walls in the middle of the night a lot. And I would not get very good sleep. Plus I struggle with insomnia. I have a hard time sleeping a lot. So I wasn't getting much sleep. And then we had a baby as well that wasn't sleeping much at night. It was hard, you guys. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. So I was showing up at the church office building just absolutely, oh my gosh, I was so tired. Like I couldn't believe how tired I was. And I would show up and I wasn't falling asleep on my desk, but I was just like kind of just out of it. And I would tell them that, yeah, I'm kind of having kind of a tough time here, but I'm ready to, get stuff done. And I was talking to my boss about that, and he's just like, okay. And I was still, a very flexible schedule, and I was still showing up at work every day, and I was having a hard time sleeping. But I remember there was one day, I don't remember, it was sometime in August of 2013. This was about the time I was really kind of struggling with sleep. And there was a coworker who I mentioned in a previous episode. Her name was. She was in charge of the church history content of LDS.org. She was a full-time employee, and I assisted her. I would assist her sometimes in content for church history for their webpage. And she contacted me and two other interns. Actually, it was one other intern. His name was. And she was just like, she gave me this task. She gave us both this task. And I thought it was really weird that they gave us both the same task. I'm just like, that's really weird. And she gave me and this other intern the same task, and it was an Excel document. And it was just like, okay, interns, I want you to copy and paste this code to the web page. And there was at least 300 of them on this Excel document. And it was pretty much whoever does the best job, gets points. That's pretty much what it was. It was it was kind of like that. It was just like, let's see who's the better intern. I felt like, looking back at it now, I felt like we were kind of considered the lesser valued interns. We were kind of the interns that no one really liked. Deep down, we weren't the best interns. There was a lot of good interns, but me and this other kid were kind of not doing the best, I guess you can say. We were kind of the noobs, I guess you can say, the new guys. We were both the newest people, and I felt like this was kind of a game. It was just like, let's see who the weakest link is, and I felt like this was kind of her idea of trying to kind of separate the wheat from the tares, I guess is what they use. They always use that term. And to figure out who's the weakest link. And I was just like cocky, I'm not a very confident guy, but I'm just like, okay, this is my time. I'm going to prove to this full-time employee who I respect a lot because she's really intelligent and she's in charge of the church history content, and she is freaking smart. She is really intelligent, and I want to get good points for her so eventually she can get me a good word so I can get hired full-time eventually, So this was my time to shine, and I was going to outshow and totally whoop this other intern. I'm a pretty competitive guy, all right? And I'm just like, I'm going to do better. I'm going to get more done. Cuz remember, it was an Excel document, and we put our initials on every time we copy and paste that one row. So she can go back and see who did the best job. It really looking back on it, that's what they were doing. It was kind of just like, let's see who the best is. And it was kind of cutthroat looking back on it, but this is what they did. And so we started, and it was kind of just like, okay, go. And it was just me and this other intern, and he was on another floor. For some reason, he was on floor 19. I don't know why he was down there. And he was kind of her buddy, they were kind of buddies. And I was just like, well, I'm gonna do a hell of a better job than this guy, this other intern, and I'm gonna blow their minds, I'm going to blow their minds. They're going to be like, JP killed it, he killed it. And we're going to hire him full time because he's so awesome. And I was copy and pasting. I remember I was trying to go as fast as I can. Remember, I only got like 1 hour of sleep the night before because my kids kept me up and I struggle with insomnia. And I was copy and pasting. And it was very easy, basic stuff. It was just copy and paste into the website, into a page, and she gave the link to the website of what certain page to put it on. And I was copy and pasting content on that website, on that web page. And it was a page that probably one person visits a month anyway. It wasn't very high traffic page, but it was just content. LDS.org was all about content, and it was a huge website. And I was going through the whole list, and it literally only took like an hour to do. I was trying to get a lot more than the other guy. And yeah, I started from the top, he started from the bottom, and then we kind of just met halfway. And then we pretty much figure out who did the most. And I kind of figured that was the best. I got the majority of them done, and I got maybe like 70% of them done compared to him. And I was so proud of myself. I'm just like, yeah, there you go. That was so cool. And I remember I was done, and I'm just like, I'm done. And I felt like I won, like I won the race. I accomplished the test. It was a test to who was the best of the two interns. And it was just like, I felt so proud. I remember walking back to the train station afterwards. I'm just like, my head held high. And I'm just like, that was badass. That was so cool. And I was just like, oh yeah, I blew her away, she's going to be like, JP is the man, and he's so awesome. And we're going to hire him full time because he was so fast and he got it done, and way faster than the other guy. And I remember I felt so proud. And then a couple of days pass, and I show up to work a couple of days later, and this was about the time we moved into another. We weren't in the church office building at this point. They actually moved us to the North office building, which was across the street. The first couple of months I was in the church office building, and then they moved our team to the North office building, which was a small 2-floor office building across the street in North Temple. Not as cool as the church office building, but it was still the church departments. This was the time we were working in the North office building, so not as glamorous as the church office building, but it's still pretty cool. And this was about 3 to 4 months in at this point. And I remember I was feeling pretty good about where I was at. I'm just like, I'm the best intern in this team. They're going to hire me full time in no time. And I was just so cocky. I was kind of cocky. I really was. I was feeling really good about where I was at. I feel like every time I'm cocky in my life, I'm not really ever cocky, but I feel like the times I am cocky, I kind of around and find out. Like I always have something bad always happens. I kind of learn the hard way. I remember I was called into a meeting. My boss, my manager, my team lead, the head guy of the team, he called me in. They called me in a meeting downstairs in the basement, and they didn't say what it was about. I'm just like, oh, okay, so it's probably about my progress, because we'd meet a lot and talk about progress and all that stuff. I'm just like, okay, they're probably giving me something to work on. This is cool. So I remember I was feeling pretty good, like everything's going fine. There was no issues. Like no one mentioned any issues to me personally, that I made any mistakes. Everyone tells me, good job, thank you, And I remember getting up and walking to this meeting, and then who was the church history lady that I worked with the other day for the test that she gave me, pretty much. She walked by, and she's always so nice. She looked at me and she's like, hi, how's your morning going? And she's like, and then I remember she was like so nice. I'm just like, she's such a good employee. Like, this is the greatest job ever. And then I walked to the meeting downstairs, and it was my boss and my manager, really good guy, but they sat me down, and I remember the looks on their faces. They had a look of concern, and I'm just like, okay, this doesn't look good. I'm just like, something's off. And at first, I'm just like, okay, what's going on? Because I thought everything's going fine. And I've had this meeting before. I've gotten laid off a few times before, in previous jobs. And I'll probably mention that later on in this podcast. But I've had this meeting before where, when something happens and you get called into a meeting with your boss, it's kind of like a girlfriend says, we need to talk. It's kind of the same thing. It's just like, oh crap, this is not going to be good. So we start with small talk. How's your day going? And then after that, they asked me this simple questions like, how's the weather and all that. And my boss looked at me. He's just like, hey, man, we've noticed that you're having an ongoing struggle here. There is an issue that you're having here where you're making mistakes. And we heard from two full-time employees that you made mistakes on the tasks that they were given. And I'm just like, who? And they mentioned her name. I'm just like, what? The other day? And they're like, yeah. And then I remember they had their laptops open, and I kind of, when they were talking to each other, I kind of glanced over and looked at the email that they had on their laptop, and it was from I was so hurt by this, because she was always so nice to me, and I felt like she was, like had my back. And then I looked at their email, and the email was pretty much just like, he made a mistake. He was going too fast, and he was doing everything wrong, and he was copy and pasting the wrong content into the wrong page, and he was making mistakes, and he was going so fast. And I remember seeing that. I'm just like, really? And I was so hurt by that, because I thought everything was fine. And she never really told me personally that I made mistakes. And I'm just like, what the hell? And I'm just like, it hit me like a 747. Like it hurt so bad. Like, this is one of the few times in my life where I literally felt like my heart was broken. Like, and I know it's understandable to make mistakes on the job, but I felt really betrayed, because they didn't tell me personally that I made the mistake. They didn't come up to me like, hey, you made a mistake. Next time do this different. And all they said was good job and moved on. And a few days later, I get this interview. And it was literally like on the way to the interview, I actually saw her walk by and she said hi to me and everything seemed fine. So it was hard. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? And there was another employee that I worked with a few weeks earlier that said the same thing about me. And I felt so betrayed. I'm just like, what the hell? I felt like they were too scared to tell me that I made a mistake on their project. And I felt like instead of them coming to me personally and telling me that I need to fix something, they fixed it themselves and never told me. And they told my boss behind my back, and I was so hurt and betrayed by that. And I'm still kind of hurt by this. Even today, it's been about 10 years now, and it still sucks thinking about this because I really felt betrayed by these people. I felt like they could have told me personally that I made a mistake. Yeah, people make mistakes. That's part of life. But I wish they didn't tell my boss behind my back like that. And I had no clue. I had no clue that I made a mistake. I thought if I just kept doing it because I thought I was doing the right thing on that project that I just did. So I was really hurt by this. And they're just like, my boss was just like, you got 30 days. If you don't get any better, we're going to can you. And that's pretty much what he said. And if you don't get any better, this keeps happening, we're going to fire you. And it was just like, okay, get out of here. And it was really kind of heartless. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, I felt so stupid too. I just felt so dumb. And I'm just like, what the hell? Like, I thought I was there for about 4 to 5 months at the time. And, and I thought I was doing pretty well as an intern, but it hurt too because now I failed that test. So now they know that I'm the weakest link. I'm the weakest intern. And there's no way in hell I'm going to get hired full time now in the job because it was a big kick to my balls, my confidence and everything that I worked towards graduating from college. And I'm just like, what the hell am I going to do now? I don't think I'm going to get hired full time here. Because all these full-time employees now, they're just like, oh, he's a terrible employee. He screwed up. So I had no chance in hell now. And that's another thing that really hurt because I knew that my confidence in getting hired full-time in that department was gone because I'm the guy who messed up on a project. And they had to go back and fix what I did. And I swear, like, I'm not crazy conspiracy guy, but I swear that whole thing was a test. It was like some type of a quiz or something to find out who was the least favored intern. And I lost the draw and I messed up and now they knew I was the weakest one. And it sucked. That's the thing I notice about Mormons. They're just too scared to be honest. They could have just told me, hey, you messed up, go back and fix it. And no, instead it was just like, oh, you're good. And then that happened and it really hurt. And I still remember that day. I don't remember what day it was specifically. It was right before my birthday or after my birthday. I don't remember. And I was so hurt. And I remember we were going to go to like the Church History Museum for lunch. They were going to have a potluck there. And I was so excited to go with everybody. And I remember I'm just like, well, this, I'm going home. And it was pretty much a flexible schedule. You can go home whenever you want. And I was going to stick around for lunch. I was excited to go with all these people, all the full-time and all my coworkers to this potluck at the Church History Museum, which was like half a mile walk, from where we were. I'm just like, them, I'm going home. I was really upset. I was really kind of pissed off, actually. I felt really betrayed by these people. I don't feel like I can trust them now because they don't tell me that I made a mistake on this project. And also, I've been sleep deprived and I haven't gotten a lot of sleep. So, and they knew that. But it was just really, really painful. It really hurt. And I remember I was just like, I'm going home. And I kind of just walked off and left. And I told my boss I was going home. He's just like, okay, go home. And I was bummed because I was really excited about the day because I wanted to go out to lunch with everybody. But I'm just like, well, I don't trust them anymore. I'm just like, they're out. I feel like they're out to get me now. And they ratted me out to my boss that I made it wasn't even a major mistake. It was just a minor mistake. I remember I walked out of the North Office building and I walked around Temple Square. And I remember there was this anti-Mormon holding a sign that said, Mormons are going to hell and all this stuff. And usually that would piss me off. I'm just like, get a life, dude. Sometimes you'll see anti-Mormons. I would walk to the train station. I would see an anti-Mormon in Temple Square. I would just shake my head at them. I was really offended by these people. But now this was the first time in my life where I looked at the guy and he was yelling at everyone passing by. And I looked at him and I didn't have any hate anymore. I'm just like, okay. It sounds kind of bad, but I'm just like, okay, maybe he's kind of right. There's some Mormons that are full of shit. I know that sounds really bad to say that, There's good and bad in everyone, but I was pretty angry. All right. The first time in my life, I remember seeing an anti-Mormon, and I'm just like, okay, maybe he's got some things right. And I know that sounds really mean to say that. And I was this was a really bad day. This was one of the worst days of my life. All right. So I think I'm bitter and angry at the church. Maybe I am a little bit. This was a really painful experience. And it was the first major kick, in my faith journey. And I remember I usually walked to the train station, which was only like a few blocks away, but I was so depressed. I didn't even want to go home. I didn't want to go back to work, and I didn't want to go home. So I literally walked down Main Street for a few hours. I literally walked from North Temple and then Salt Lake City Main Street all the way down to like where the ballpark is, which was like 21st South. So like several miles walking down a busy street. I was just walking there. I had my suitcase, my computer, my laptop, and I had my suit and tie, and it was probably like 100 degrees that day, and I was covered in sweat, but I didn't care. I was so depressed. It was one of the few times in my life where I seriously was thinking to myself, why just walk in front of this moving bus? Like, I was so depressed. Now I'm not saying that I was gonna commit suicide, but I wish I just disappeared. I was wishing that I was going to disappear. I did not want to exist anymore. And I was, at the first time, I'm just like, the church office building, the church, my coworkers, I can't trust them. And I don't know what to do. I was terrified. And I was also scared because it was not only a bad experience of that job in general, it was also my confidence in having a full-time job and support my family, because I'm a dumbass and I have short-term memory problems. I have learning disabilities, and that was another row. I have a bad habit. This isn't the first time that I had a job where I made a mistake. I have a bad habit of jumping the gun and not communicating very well, and then jumping the gun and then getting the job done, and the boss is like, what the hell, man, you messed up. But this sucked because they didn't tell me until a week later that I messed up, and I felt really betrayed. And it was just ironic that on the way to this meeting, I talked, one of the people that ratted me out was just like, hi, how's your morning? Like what I mentioned earlier. That was so Mormon, just Mormons are some of the nicest people you'll meet, but they have some of the sharpest blades to stab you in the back. It's just you can't trust anyone in the Mormon Church. It feels like a lot of time there's a lot of good people in the church, but you can't trust the nice people sometimes because they can really hurt you. They're too afraid to be honest sometimes, and I felt like this was really hard on me. And I remember I was just walking south on Main Street for miles and miles and blocks, and I was just like, I want to die. Like, I seriously just wanted to die. I wanted to disappear. I didn't want to do this anymore. And I was scared to go home and tell my wife what happened, and she'll be like, oh no, And we were both kind of struggling at the time, This is when we were happily married for several years, but this is when it was stressful having those two kids at home that, one had autism and the other one wasn't sleeping at night. And it was just really hard. And then I come home and I'm just like, oh yeah, I hate my job now. And my job has 30 days. If I don't get better in 30 days, they're going to fire my ass. It was just, oh my gosh, it was so hard. And I'm just like, at this point, I'm just like, I think I want to get the hell out of the church office job. I want to find another job. I don't want to work there, but also my confidence was shot because I'm just like, what if this keeps happening everywhere else? So I remember walking all the way far, and I refer to this as the walk, in my life. I literally walked. I was planning on walking all the way to freaking Sandy. Like, I didn't know how long I wanted to walk, but I wanted to walk as long as possible. A part of me thought of walking all the way home. It would have took the rest of the day, but all night probably. But then eventually I started to get tired, so I hopped on the train station, and then I think it was the one by the ballpark in South Salt Lake, and I got on and I went home, and I got home and I was so depressed and talked to my wife, and she was just like, okay, well, work harder, and 30 days you should have the job. And sure enough, 30 days later I improved and I didn't get fired. I knew at that point I could not trust anyone at the church office job. I knew I had no chance whatsoever to get hired full time, and I felt so betrayed by those two coworkers of mine. I knew that I couldn't trust them anymore, and they couldn't trust me. And that is when it all kind of went downhill. That was when it all became hell, because eventually, not just them, but every full-time employee did not want to work with me anymore. And I would literally show up to the church job with nothing to do for hours because nobody would say no one would want to work with me because I was the intern that screwed up that one time. And eventually word spread in the department that this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He messed up, and I don't want to give him my work because I don't want to go back and fix it. They gave up. They all gave up on me, every single one of them. And I literally showed up to work and had nothing to do. And eventually my boss was like, oh yeah, just fix broken links, which was the most grunt work of all. But I didn't want to fix links. I wanted to add on. I wanted to do what everyone else was doing, but I felt really betrayed. And so that made it really hard for me. And that's what happened. That was the first downfall of my experience working for the church. And I'm gonna close this episode right now. And that was kind of hard to talk about because that was a really hard experience. And I gotta go right now. But thanks for listening. The next episode should explain more about what just happens next. But anyway, thanks for listening. Subscribe, rate the podcast, and thanks for listening. Bye.